What does it mean to debate? How do we, as a society, make decisions with conflicting information? How do our constitutionally guaranteed rights factor into questions of energy and the environment? Today, we will discuss the potential for issues concerning energy and climate change to bring up questions about our basic freedoms, more specifically, our First Amendment right to free speech.
Beyond simply broadcasting information about the application of the First Amendment to the issue of climate science, this video is a way for the four of us to debate conflicting beliefs within our video group. The four of us have differing values and assumptions about the First Amendment and how it relates to the issue of free speech in climate science.
Sam and Anson, on one hand, are personally very strong believers in the First Amendment. They view any attempt to silence certain minority voices or unpopular opinions, especially within the context of climate science, as a serious violation of our intrinsic rights. For Sam and Anson, the First Amendment is an absolute right, one that cannot be suppressed or restricted in the name of any potential societal benefit. Richard, on the other hand, is from China, a country in which freedom of speech is constantly suppressed. Therefore, Richard is also a firm believer of the First Amendment and was concerned that the suppression of First Amendment rights by the U.S. government could set an extremely dangerous precedent for the future. Alberto, on the other hand, believes that the First Amendment should certainly be respected and valued, but also that there are certain contexts in which First Amendment rights can and should be restricted for the benefit of society.
Let us now turn to the issue at hand. There is a freedom of speech issue in the arena of climate science. Namely, that certain powerful members of the political establishment have sought to criminalize and suppress the ability for climate change skeptics to speak freely about the conclusion of their research. Regardless of whether or not these climate change skeptics are right or wrong, we believe it is problematic that their First Amendment rights are, in some ways, disrespected and denied.
Just last year, 19 state attorney generals formed a coalition to launch legal action against energy companies on the grounds that climate denial was not protected by free speech. The precedent these AGs sought to draw on was the prosecution of tobacco companies under anti-racketeering laws. Under those laws, withholding information and purposely misleading the public on matters of health and safety did not protect the rights of the tobacco companies to claim that their products did not cause cancer. But it is an energy company seeking to understand the extent of anthropogenic influences on Earth's temperatures on the same level of malicious intent? We do not believe so.
The lawsuit failed, but its ramifications continued, fiercely intimidating scientists who questioned the consensus view. Not only afraid of having legal actions taken against them, scientists now also face the threat of having their research funding cut if they do not produce results that their government donors wish to see.
The whole climate issue and the climate science has been dominated by, of course, government funding. If you can't find a dead polar bear somewhere, you're not going to get funded. It's really been that bad.
The relationship between government funding and free and fair speech may not seem incredibly clear. Discriminate government funding, however, does affect the impact of research and the ways in which the results of that research are disseminated amongst the public. This inevitably favors certain viewpoints over others, thereby creating an unfair playing field for climate scientists who do not produce results that are in line with the consensus view.
Around November, there was a release of these ClimateGate emails. So that angers a lot of this activist group like Greenpeace and New York Times and all these others. They started to mount a rather serious, actually, sort of counter-attack, quote-unquote, on people like myself and all that. So, it forces my institution to actually release my email, for example. I mean, mine was released to Greenpeace, which is not a scientific organization, which is very unfortunate. So you can see the asymmetry and actually the imbalance and biases,
This is not an issue about being correct or incorrect. Dr. Ronald Sass, the lead author of an annual UN IPCC report, also admits that the continued funding is predicated on providing favorable results.
Firstly, he criticized the United Nations. I'm thoroughly behind that idea. I worked for the United Nations for a while. The best thing about working for the United Nations is that you get to fly first class. The worst thing is that I got fired because I turned in a report which was not what they wanted to hear.
It is our concern as students of energy cultures that both sides of the global warming debate have put their heads in separate echo chambers. Is either side willing to entertain the argument that he or she may be wrong? Is either side even willing to admit that there is the slightest amount of uncertainty of what the future will hold? What does this say about our acceptance of the values that have brought together Americans for generations? For the purposes of this conference on culture, our question to you is not whether or not the skeptics are correct, but rather whether or not the grounds of this discussion is fair and consistent with the values we all share as Americans. It is our hope that by listening to each other, we will be able to reach a more conclusive truth, and from there proceed with the necessary policy actions. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, a future of prosperity and health. Personally, we'd like climate scientists to remain open-minded and not discard theories because they challenge the consensus view. In fact, the divergence in multiple climate models shows that we still have extreme uncertainty about what the future is going to hold. Thank you for being open-minded, and thank you for watching this video.